All right, this is George here with the Talking Tone podcast. And this week, for our first episode, we've got Alex Ainsworth, a guitarist from Caldecott in South Wales. He's involved in projects with the Bluesfire blues band. He's the frontman and singer and guitarist in that band. He also plays guitarist for an indie rock and roll band called The Rogues. He's the guitarist for a rock and metal band called Old Peak. And he's done some sideman work with Ryan Keyes and the Tom Williams Swing Band. Did I get all that right, Alex?
Yeah, closer than I get it right. That's for sure.
Well, I've got it written down, so that always helps. It's good to see you, man, and not in person, but on cam. We made a bit of a connection a little while back on Instagram, didn't we?
Yeah, probably year and a half, 2 years, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. So this being episode 1, being the first time that I've done something like this, there may be or may not be a few moments where things may go awry. So bear with us.
That's where the fun is.
Absolutely. So Alex, I'm curious to find out because I think you're 22 years old, aren't you?
Yeah, I just turned 22 on Saturday, so I'm old news now. I am.
Yeah, try being 33, then you'll know old news. Now, happy birthday for Saturday.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'm curious to find out, like, how did the guitar fall into your hands, and sort of what age were you when you first started playing?
I first started playing when I was 5, and like all the way up until that point, like I'd just been listening to everything that my dad was listening to because, what else do you do when you're 5? You just consume what's around you, don't you? So it was just as early as I can remember, just stuff like Chris Rea and T-Rex and like Booker T and the MGs and things like that. It's just always my dad was just always playing it. It's just kind of the classic thing, really. But,
right.
So I had like a couple of like just plastic guitars, like toy guitars, when I was like 3 and like that kind of age, and I always like messed about with it. Like I always had like an interest in it. And then when I was about 5, my dad got me like my first proper like guitar. And it was a Chinese Fender, one of those pack things, like Blackie. And they came with like one of those little tiny Fender solid state amps. That was great. I just remember getting that and just being obsessed with it since, really.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so the times that I've seen you playing on Instagram, you've been predominantly playing Gibson style guitars, Les Pauls, Epiphones. So you started off life on a Strat. You started relatively early at 5. So talk me through like your first few years of playing. Did you receive guitar lessons from anyone?
So the first few years, I think I probably started taking lessons when I was about 8 or 9. It was just like primary school classical guitar style things, like learning like just sight reading and basic stuff. But it was helpful for learning the basic notes and things like that. The odd like couple of chords and things. I took a few lessons of those. The one thing I sort of remember from that is I started wanting to play with a pick.
Right.
I started that in a classical guitar lesson. The teacher, she wasn't having it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the main thing I remember from all that.
Right. So you were 8 or 9, and already you were taking classical guitar lessons, and something was saying to you, I want to play with the pick, and you've had early musical influences from like Chris Rea to a couple of other names you mentioned. So already you're sort of more falling into that rock sort of thing.
Yeah.
Who were your early influences then? Who sort of got you really inspired? Because for me, I started guitar quite a bit later than you. I first had a guitar put in my hands when I was 11, but I didn't really sort of play it until I was 13. And it was because my nan gave me a Jimi Hendrix CD when I was about 13. And that's what first, and Nirvana and Kurt Cobain as well, totally different sort of influence. But that's what really sort of said, right, okay, this
Yeah.
guitar thing, I love it. So what were your early influences, and what really inspired you to start playing?
The first the first sort of guitar hero, I guess, was David Gilmour. I remember being about 7 or 8, and I think my dad got me Dark Side of the Moon instructional videos,
Right.
and so I spent a long time like just sitting in front of the TV, just watching that.
Yeah.
Just thinking, oh, this is just, and the thing that always captured me like was Time, the song from Dark Side, and that was the first guitar solo I ever heard, where it was just the most incredible thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
That solo, it still just blows my mind. Really, it's
Yeah. Well, the
um,
thing with his playing is that he's just so lyrical and
mm,
emotive, and
yeah,
he just plays the right notes at the right time. He's one of those players that
mm,
just hits
yeah,
it and really makes the guitar sing. So
yeah.
I can see why you had that attraction to Pink Floyd. So you had Pink Floyd. Were there any others?
So Mark Knopfler was another one as well at the time. Um, like hearing like Money for Nothing and stuff like that in the car on the way to school. Sultans, obviously, Telegraph Road and Tunnel of Love and all that.
Right.
It's just sort of classic stuff now, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah. No, that is all really good stuff, and grounding and stuff to really propel you on your journey of playing guitar. That's for sure. You weren't sitting around listening to pop boy bands or anything like that.
Nah, that's never been my thing. Really.
No. No. Okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough. Right. So you've mentioned Mark Knopfler, David Gilmour, but there is a player that I've seen in your playing, at least in your some of your earlier videos that I saw, and it's a very sort of strong, like Gary Moore influence. Um, so
Yeah.
how did that come about for you?
I think that was a bit later. That was probably about, I think I was about 12 or 13, and it's probably like just after he died, I think. Um,
Yeah,
but I don't know. I just remember coming across the Still Got the Blues video on YouTube, and just thinking, it was just another one of those moments where it was like the same thing with David Gilmour and that. It was just like, this guy, he's just getting me right inside, It's
Sure.
just the stuff that he would do is just, he was so lyrical about like stuff that he would play, but he would have moments where it was just like he would just let rip, and
Sure.
it's the most intense thing that I've ever heard. Really,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's yeah,
That's a great way of putting it. And intense is the word that I would use for Gary Moore. Like, period. If there's any word that I could use, just one word, it would be intense. You're right. He is, for lack of a better term, he's just burning the whole way through. I found out something interesting actually about Gary Moore. It's probably the only similarity between me and Gary Moore. But we're both left-handed players that play right-handed, and I know there's a few of us out there. So yeah, he had some. What did I watch? I think one of my first sort of. I mean, I was aware of him for years before this, but I think it was like one of the first Eric Clapton Crossroads festivals. I think he came on that and burnt the house down. Literally, it was a spectacle. So Gary Moore, like he's been a big influence on you, and he's informed your playing. Like, how did you get some of your chops together then, Alex? Because some of your technique and stuff is a little, you've got your own thing going on, but some of it's reminiscent of him. So how did that sort of come about?
Well, it's a combination of, I think, knowing what you want to hear in your head, who your influences are. Like, we're all the product of what we listen to, essentially, really. Even if we sound nothing like who we listen to, it's still, we're still a product of them.
Sure.
And I guess the technical chops thing, that was, I think to me, it's always been important to be sort of quite dexterous with the fingers, because it's like, in order to get to what you want to hear in your head, sometimes for me at least, it does require that. Sometimes I think, I want to be able to play this. If I can't play it technically, then it's kind of a stuck moment. Then that's when you've got to put the hours in, and it's another one of those moments. So I took a few lessons from when I was about 13 from a guy called Harry Scott Elliott, who he plays with Ches Kane. I don't know if you've seen her. She's like a rock singer who's doing quite well at the minute.
Right.
So yeah, if like you go on social media and type Ches Kane, he's the guitar player, and
right.
And he's like where I kind of got the technical bits from. Really, it was his lessons that really, it got me thinking about my technique.
Right.
And just being able to get your fingers around the fingerboard,
Sure.
But yeah, but obviously technique, like, that's not music. It's a tool that you use to create the music that you want to hear. So for me, that's kind of where everything comes together. It's
sure.
Yeah, it's this combination thing.
Yeah. You're so right. I mean, technique for me definitely just falls in the camp of being able to express what you wanted to be able to express, and that shouldn't be limited to the technique itself. It shouldn't be just about burning through a load of scales for the sake of it, like some sort of sport, or like I always think of the sort of term, when I see people, because I teach guitar, and I've got some students that are intermediate, and some of them are more advanced, and they some of them get caught in the trap of just going up and down scales, and it's like musical press ups. It's
Yeah,
it's an exercise, but it has to have some sort of musical function in terms of what you're trying to say. Otherwise,
yeah,
it's essentially pointless. It might appeal to young guys who are just starting out, and they see someone
yeah.
blazing through something, and you do go, oh wow, look at that. But after a
Mm,
while, you just kind of, especially once you learn how to do some of it, it's almost like the trick has been
yeah,
revealed, and now you're more like, okay, that's great, but what have you actually got to say?
yeah. That's one of the things that I like in my early teens that I like 13, 14 when I was doing that. I was guilty of doing that.
Yeah, sure.
It's just the excitement of it is, it's novel for a year.
Yeah,
Uh, but then obviously you get put in a situation where you think, oh, okay, I've actually got to play some music, and that's kind
yeah,
of the point. It's easy to get lost in the excitement of it, being able
yeah,
to play
sure.
really fast, and
Yeah,
you know. But yeah, you have
yeah,
to put it into context, don't you?
for sure. Yeah, no, right. It is like just to throw another analogy out there. It's like getting like a fast car for the first time, and then getting in and being able to drive it really fast,
Yeah,
and that novelty soon wears off.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
cool. So you know how. So you've got your Gary Moore influences. You've got your other influences. Um, how are they sort of feeding into the music that you're doing now with your bands? Because I know I've mentioned you've got your blues band, which I suppose your prior influences would inform that um,
Yeah, yeah.
a little bit more, perhaps, than like. Because I've heard some of your stuff that you've done with the Rogues, and that's much more of an indie rock sort of settings.
Mm.
That's a totally different thing. So how do you go about like approaching developing guitar parts for that band and that kind of thing?
Well, for the Rogues, it's more of a case of being about the song. Um, knowing like about the structure of a song, and also being able to just form simple chord melodies, and it's all about melody. The Rogues.
Yeah,
Oh, there we go.
yeah,
Yeah, it's all about melody. So, and that's another good thing about blues is that because that's all melodies. Well, that's essentially just all melodies.
yeah,
Um, it's very melodic. Then it does surprisingly feed in. I
sure.
remember when I first. It's strange because I don't really listen to a lot of indie music. Um, I let Andy, our songwriter, I let him do all that.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's quite a cool mix though, because there's a lot of indie bands where I at least notice that when we go out and play, and I just kind of think, yeah, it's cool, but it's for me at least, it's like, oh, it's just another indie band,
sure.
and
Yeah,
for me, the blues always comes back. Like it always comes back to it. Um, doesn't matter what it is, it's always
yeah,
there.
yeah. That's the same for me. Just it's informed everything that I've ever done, and that for me has turned out to be an asset, if anything else, because I've noticed the players that are influenced by blues um, and have that in their playing. Inherently, they've got like a really strong musical foundation to work on.
Mm,
Because it does teach you to be tasteful. It teaches you to sort of put a lot of importance on things like timing, vibrato, and stuff you mentioned already, like melodic choices. They're all things that are sort of heavily favoured in blues.
Yeah.
So that's something that I personally never want to lose in anything that I do, even if I find myself in a situation like you, which I have done, a good few times where I've been doing musical projects, and I'm like, this is not my usual thing. I don't even really
Yeah.
listen to this kind of music. But I've
Yeah.
always found, like, coming out the other end of it, I've grown as a musician and as a player, and come out the other side of it more informed and more well-rounded.
Yeah.
So you sort of, you're developing parts, like you said, melodically and sort of influenced in your own way in the Rogues. And are you all like similar sort of age in the Rogues? You're all like early 20s?
Yeah. Yeah. We're all pretty much early 20s. Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah.
So what are you guys planning on? Have you got anything planned with your music that you're doing at the moment?
Yes. So we just announced a second single, which will be coming out. Plug.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Get that in.
Yeah. I think that's coming out. If I can, it's 10th of August. I think.
Right.
if I got that right.
Okay.
Yeah, the first single we did has done really well. Actually, it was called Lizzie. It's done really well. It's got about 7,000 streams on Spotify, and it's been out for about 2 months now.
Nice.
It's done really well on the Instagram, and it's a good asset to have actually as well, because you use that to get more gigs. So
Sure.
um,
Yeah. So if you got, can people listen to you on Spotify or any other listening platforms for the Rogues?
yeah, so there's Spotify. There's I think it's on all the other ones as well, like like Apple Music and yeah, there's a couple of like live sessions on YouTube that we've done called C Block, which has been really good for us.
Right. Nice. Okay. Well, I encourage everybody to check them out. I mean, I've listened to a bit of your stuff with
Oh,
the
thank you very
Rogues,
much.
and yeah, you guys are great. I'm sure you're going to have a good few years ahead, hopefully, doing your thing. So that's the Rogues. Before we move on, talking more guitar chat, which I'm keen to move on to. What about
Absolutely.
Old Peak? Because I've heard less of Old Peak. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so at the start of this year, basically, there's a guy called Nico Martin who is a really good bass player, uh, really nice guy, and he was playing with Ches Kane last year, who was the guitar player I mentioned, who was in the
Sure.
band, and then basically, yeah, he stopped doing that, and he wanted to write his own songs, and he wanted somebody to be the guitar player. So, you know, he only lives like a few miles from me, so why not?
Yeah.
we'd been following each other for a while, and yeah, we just sort of got together. Like we just, do you want to do this? Yeah, sure. And we sort of kept it as a studio project.
Right.
Um, so it's not a live band. Um, it's all been kept as a studio project, really.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's just because, yeah, obviously with life stuff, like he has a demanding job, and obviously I've got a load of other stuff. So
Sure.
we just
Yeah.
thought, well,
So,
that's the most sensible way to keep it, really.
right. Yeah. So you basically you're in a process of recording stuff, and um, you're busy with other projects, but you're kind of keeping it going and producing music with the idea to release it at some point.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's a different type of music to my foundation. It's a lot more. It's a lot heavier. It's a lot more grindy.
Sure.
It's yeah. It's for me. I like to. I've been really enjoying the last like year, just diversifying what I'm playing. Really,
Yeah.
um, I just find it's really good just to have a knowledge of, you know, every sort of everything that you can get your hands on. Really.
Right. Yeah, I'd definitely agree. Like I said earlier, that for me has been just fantastic. Just getting involved in all this kind of different stuff, and just saying yes to things. Um,
Mm,
like now that I'm a bit older, I say yes to less because
yeah.
I've already kind of had that formative period where I'm testing things out, I'm saying yes to things, I'm seeing where things go, um, and for me, I've got a little bit choosier, a little bit more select with what it is that I'm doing, but that hasn't preceded years of doing lots of different things and seeing where I'm
Mm,
at, and that, like I said, I think that can only help. Because like you, I started off with certain kinds of ideas and influences, um, and I think, looking back now, I would have done myself a disservice if I hadn't have explored those other options,
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
for sure. Um, okay, then, right. Let's get back to guitar chat. So, I don't know this about you, but I don't think, are you a particularly gearhead? Because I get
Uh,
the
I
impression that you're not as much of a gearhead.
I used to not be, and the last 2 years it's turning upside down a bit. It is. It's. I'm starting to get a bit out of hand with it all. So I
Yeah.
just went. Yeah, my most recent acquirement was that Marshall Class 5,
Right.
which I bought.
Yeah.
I bought a couple days ago. Um,
Nice.
I've already taken it for 2 practices, and I've determined already that I love it, and I'm gonna get another one. Um, it's just yeah, it's just really handy to have. I've never had a valve combo. I've always only had valve heads and cabs.
Right. Sure.
Um, and I got my first Marshall nearly 10 years ago, and that was a JCM 900 with a two Framus 212,
Right.
100-watt one. Yeah, so I've been scaling down over the last few years.
Sure. I think we all have. I think
Yeah.
when you're doing, there are some gigs where I do bigger stages, but a lot of places I'm playing, they're just small places or medium-sized places, and now
Mm,
everywhere wants you to just be increasingly quieter and quieter. Um, and yeah, I'm definitely in the club of small to medium-sized combo amp, and
yeah.
that does my back good, and it also does the venue
Yeah.
good because you can get them that little bit louder, and
Yeah. Yeah.
get the valves working that bit much more, that gets that sound. So you got the Marshall Class 5. So
Mm.
no, it's not an expensive amp, is it? The Class 5.
No, no, they're quite affordable, really. Like on second-hand market now. I got this one for about 170. A few years ago, they used to be cheaper. They did like 100, odd, I think.
Right.
Um,
Wow.
but
That's for
it's
a
a
valve
really
amp. That's amazing.
yeah. It's a British made one as well, so it's you think, oh, okay, it might be a bit more premium, but
Yeah.
and I was looking. There's I've been looking at getting like a Pro Junior or something to go next to it,
Right.
and but they're
The,
they're
what
like
a thing.
a Fender Pro
Yeah.
Junior, like a Blues Junior or something like of that nature.
Sure.
And that's like 300, 350 on secondhand market. So I could get two of these for almost the price of one of those. And how is that? Why is it
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I don't have the answer for that one. I've got a Blues Junior. I've had about 3 over the years. Yeah,
Mm,
about 3, and they're great because you can just pick them up, bung them in the car, and
mm,
I use mine for rehearsals. They're great for that, or
yeah.
just a smaller gig. If you're playing a small place, they can be ideal for that. Um, and they do pair well with another amp I've found, and I'm sure they'd go well
Mm,
with a Class 5 if you were to ever pick one of
yeah.
those up as well. Um, so, what other amps are you into? Have you got another
Um,
a bigger one that you play, or
yeah. So I've got the 100 watt JCM 900, the big one.
yeah,
I've got the 20 for the blues gigs. I use the 20 watt Silver Jubilee, the mini. Was
right,
that's a really good amp. That I really enjoy that one. And I just use like a 112 or a couple of 212s with vintage 30s in them, and
nice,
it's just the right sound. It's the right feel. It just does everything that you want it you want a Marshall to do, really.
sure, yeah,
Um, been using. I've got a DSL 15, uh, which it needs. Well, I bought the new valves, but I haven't put them in yet.
right,
And I've got a DSL 20 as well, which is all right. It's not my favorite one, but it's okay.
yeah, nice. So that, like you just said a minute ago, that Silver Jubilee thing, and I imagine you are playing your Epiphone Les Paul. Is that right? You use an Epiphone?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Exactly.
nice. Yeah, let's have a look at that then.
There you go. It's yeah.
Lovely. So
What? Can you hear
what
the?
so what do you know anything about that guitar, like what year it is? And because that's your number one, isn't it? That's like your
That's
number
yeah.
one guitar.
That's the number one out of about 20 guitars in the spare bedroom that there is. I think I've had this one since 2016, I think.
Right.
And it's a 1960 Tribute Plus. So I think it's based. Well, should be anyway. I think it's based on like a 1960 Les Paul kind of guitar.
Right.
That, but it's got Gibson Classic 57s and CTS 500K parts and
Right.
Switchcraft bits. It's basically it's an Epiphone, like it's a higher model, but it's got all the good electronics in it.
Sure. Yeah, I've had a couple of Epiphones before, and I really regret selling one of them years ago. I had a Les Paul um, Gold Top, and it
Mm,
was an Epiphone. I forgot what year, but it was a really nice guitar. And in fact, a lot of Epiphones that I've played have been nicer than some Gibsons that I've picked up. Um,
mm,
they're just. I don't know about you, but I'm a believer in that guitars. It's not just like the price tag on the headstock.
mm.
It's what it's like when you first pick it up, and
Yeah, yeah.
and like you said, like especially when you upgrade the pickups or the electronics or whatever. Um,
Mm,
all my guitars are like that, really. I haven't really got anything that expensive. I've just got, you know, a few guitars that I really love that I've just put a bit of money into just to get them that
yeah.
bit
Mm.
nicer. And um, so you're predominantly a Marshall guy. Your number one's an Epiphone. What have you got in between that? Do you use any effects?
So yeah, I mean, a few years ago, I didn't use any effects. I didn't really have any pedals.
Sure.
I was just straight in. This is when I first started the Bluesfire blues thing. It was because, yeah, I mean, because we had a keyboard player at the time, I just didn't feel any need to have effects. I was just thinking, oh, I'll just play guitar and the keyboard does everything.
Sure.
Obviously, a few years later, I'm doing a lot more stuff, and like I've just really gotten into using loads of different effects and stuff. And, I think my current my main thing is using a Helix now. Just the onboard effects and for traveling and stuff is really good because the
Yeah.
cab simulation in it is in my opinion it's really good anyway.
Yeah. Right.
But the onboard effects in that is great, and it is an economical thing as well because I mean the pedal market is ridiculous now.
Sure.
And I haven't got loads of money to spend on loads of different effects, so having everything in just one unit that I can use, and it's just what works for me, really.
Yeah. Sure. That's you raised some really good points there, and I think the effects market has gone out of control. It's insane, insane. I think how I am now versus how I used to be. I've changed a lot of my perspective on the market, and now I'm much more interested in just getting a piece of gear every now and again that I feel like I need or I want to be able to do a certain thing.
Yeah,
And I'm not really too interested in changing things out all the time or swapping one overdrive pedal for another, or because it's just I've gone, don't get me wrong, I've gone through quite a lot of different stuff over the years,
yeah,
but stumbled on some things that really work for me and I like, and then I've just sort of left it there. I'm like, well, if I can't do what I need to be able to do with this clone copy, um,
yeah.
a King of Tone, a
Mm.
Strymon. If I can't do it with that stuff, then I ain't going to be able to do it with anything. So that's my thing on it. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
save your money. And
That's what I'm
like,
like. Yeah,
yeah, for
but
sure.
unless I need something that's completely wacky, um,
Yeah,
the Helix has probably got it in it. I've also got a
yeah,
Boss ME80 as well, which has got some cool stuff in it as well, which I like.
yeah.
It's got the expression foot thing on it as well, which is really useful.
Nice.
Um, so I use that for like a freeze effect or something
Right. Yeah,
with some modulation going through it or something like that. If I
yeah,
want to do something cool, I just break that out.
yeah. Right. Now you can cover a lot of ground with
Mm.
those like effects multi processors, and
Yeah,
they sound great. They're getting better all the time. Every year they're releasing something that sounds slightly
yeah,
better. And I've done a few ship contracts, and a lot of ships these days are just no amps on them, so you have to
mm.
use like a preamp or an amp simulator. And I've been using
Yeah,
the Strymon Iridium, and it just
mm.
it I'm not going to say that it will replace a guitar amp for me because it's not, but
Yeah,
they've got it to the point now where, in terms of what the audience hears, it sounds great. Like you can just whack all your regular effects
yeah.
pedals in front of it, or not,
Mm.
and just use that, and it sounds really good.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
they are closing the gap all the time. It's getting better and better.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. We just did like we just finished doing like a sort of tour, a mini tour for the first single that the Rogues released, and I did all the traveling. We did it all in my car, all five of us. I just brought my Les Paul, my Helix, and that was it.
Right.
And it's like, if I can get away with it, then that's the rig that I'll use.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just, I mean, in terms of the audience, you're right. It's like I mean, essentially, nobody's going to really care unless you have somebody who's a real gearhead in the audience, which rarely happens, really.
Sure.
At least in my experience.
Yeah, and I'm never playing for that person. I'm not playing for the one guy that comes up to you at the end of the gig and goes, "What lead do you use with your guitar?" Like, don't know, Planet Waves one. Well,
yeah.
They're well-meaning guys. I'm only joking. You're right. Yeah, the audience they're not going to know.
No.
Unless it impacts your performance, I suppose. If you were doing your own thing and you were sort of, especially with the blues guitar thing, I found, if you're doing that, then
yeah, with the blues stuff, like I do still use real amps, for that. That's kind of why I bought this thing, really, the Class 5, is because I want to use it for the traveling, and it's small enough to fit in the car with all the other stuff with the band.
Sure. Yeah.
It sounds wicked when it's cranked. It's like a it is like a mini blues breaker Marshall, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing. It's like throughout that travel, I realized, I do miss having that relationship between the guitar and the speaker, because you get no feedback from the floor monitor, really, with a Helix. It's, and you think, oh, okay, it sounds nice. I'm sure it sounds all right coming out front of house, but I'm struggling to enjoy my sound a little bit because there's no guitar speaker. It's a weird thing, really, because I've learned from that you really have to know what you're doing, like actually just playing guitar and making sure that you've rehearsed properly.
Yeah.
Especially if the monitor sounds horrible.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to have a lot of confidence in your positioning.
100%. You're so right. When you're usually doing these Rhodes gigs with your Helix, do you have in-ears, or are you just using a monitor on stage in front of you?
It's just been a monitor most of the time. Because there's nothing else, really. So unless another band lets us use an amplifier or something, but I'm not going to count on that, am I?
No, sure. Yeah, but the reason I ask is because I've obviously done both, and I find playing with in-ears in and no monitor is another. It's another level of, oh my god, my guitar isn't really giving me anything back. I did a 6-month cruise ship contract with that very experience, and I can tell you, it was just it warped my mind how different it was to hit a string and for really nothing to come back at you was just the weirdest experience. It took me a long while to get with that, and I was speaking to some of the band members, like the bass player and keys player, and they sort of looked at me like they didn't get it.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
And I'm like, no, guys, you don't realise, your instrument might not require that guitars, especially when you're playing lead guitar, like to have that visceral experience of playing a string and it coming through the speaker, and you feel that air being moved, that you can't replace that, as far as I'm concerned.
No, it is difficult to replace that in a monitor. It's for the blues gigs, because I'm singing, I use in-ears but I only use the in-ears purely for the vocal and nothing else. Because
Sure. Yeah.
it's just with the guitar thing. I just think, well, I've got a real amp, I've got a cab.
Yeah.
As long as
Don't
it's
need
loud
it.
enough, for the stage to hear, then out front, like it's going to be mic'd.
Sure.
That's But with
Yeah.
with the traveling with the Helix, it is There was one gig that we did, and I was pretty much playing blind, but not because I couldn't hear the cab, the monitor, but because it was so like high frequency. I'm sure it was running at like 10K frequency. I'm sure this
Yeah.
monitor. I couldn't define anything I was playing. The bass player could hear it, and he
Sure.
was so confused about what he was hearing coming from my
Yeah.
guitar. And,
Nightmare.
yeah. But
We've all been there. I've been there many times where you're just there and you're just like, what is going on? What is going on here? Like, I'm supposed to play in these conditions, Right, Alex, we've hit the point in the podcast where I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions. And
nice.
yeah, there's just three really. So, quick fire question number one: dream band out of any era or style of music. You got 5 members that you can pick from. Who would you have in your band?
That's too difficult. Second question.
Well, okay, we get it. If you're finding some of the members a bit difficult to fill, can you at least say who would you have on vocals and guitar? Surely you can get there with that.
Well, if it can be anyone in the world.
Anyone, yeah.
So vocals, probably Paul Rogers. I think he's a good one. He's a good mix of everything. He's wicked.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Guitar, it's got to be Gary Moore. It's got to
Right.
be.
Yeah. How about bass?
I don't know. Bob Daisley, he can do everything.
Who's he?
So he in the 80s, like he played with like Ozzy.
Right.
He played with Gary Moore for a bit.
Sure.
And he was doing some stuff with like Don Airey and all those kind of older rockers types. He's an excellent bass player. He knows when to play at the right time.
Right. Okay. So he knows what he's doing, and he's had a partnership with Gary Moore. So that'll help.
Yeah, guys,
all right. So this isn't too difficult now, I don't think. Drummer.
There's so many different drummers, isn't there? But I'm just thinking of somebody who can do everything.
Well, I was going to help you out. So you've got Paul Rogers on vocals, Gary Moore, Gary Moore's bass player, right? It's almost a too obvious choice. But what about John Bonham?
Yeah, I was thinking that, but yeah, all right.
Just because of the groove, the rock thing, he can do all of that.
Yeah. All right, John Bonham. Then.
All right, well, John Bonham. Right, give me just one more. What about rhythm guitar? Who do you have playing rhythm guitar?
Malcolm Young, any day.
All right, nice choice. Nice
There
choice.
you
Okay,
go.
all right, we got through that. Okay, the next two should be a little bit easier. If you could play in any era, any year, like between a couple of years or whatever, what era would you go to, and why?
I would say mid to late 60s, London, middle of London. It's just where it was all happening, wasn't it? Really.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be inclined to agree. You've got Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix, all those guys.
Peter Green. I would just want to hear Peter Green with a loud Marshall stack.
Yeah,
and just
for sure.
vibrating through the walls of like some little club in London somewhere.
Yeah. Oh man, that would have been something. Okay, right, last one. So you're only 22, so this is going to be a bit of might be a bit of a trickier question to answer. So I could pitch it in a couple of ways. The question is, if you could give yourself advice starting out again, would there be any advice that you'd give yourself?
I would say start writing songs earlier. That would be the one. Because I've got a lot of songs that I've written over the last 3 or 4 years. But it's the one thing that I wish I'd done when I was 12, as much as I played guitar.
Sure.
That would be the one thing.
Right. Nice advice. So something that I could have definitely have taken on board. I think you and I are similar in that. I mean, now I'm writing music and now I'm doing stuff, and I have written music for years, but I think there's a certain point in our development, isn't there, where we're sort of focusing on getting our chops together and focusing very much on guitar as opposed to writing songs. And I think we can all forget that playing the guitar is the purpose, is to kind of play songs.
It's to play songs.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. Cool. Well, thanks for coming on for my first
thanks.
episode.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure, and we not that we've met in person yet, but we've had a chance to meet at least in this capacity.
Yeah.
And no, it's been really great, man. Thank you. So before we part ways, is there anywhere that people can go to listen to you or to catch up with what you're doing?
Yes. So Instagram is Alex Ainsworth Music. Facebook is Alex Ainsworth. The band stuff: Bluesfire Blues Band, The Rogues, Old Peak. Yeah.
Nice.
That's much. Yeah, I think that's all of them.
Yeah.
so many of them these days.
Yeah. No, you got it. Yeah. So for anyone listening, that's where you can find Alex, and definitely check him out. He's a great player, and he's got a really bright future ahead of him. So yeah, thanks, Alex, and until next time, thanks for listening, everyone.